Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any exciting bookish things that have happened, or in this case, exciting bookish things that are still to come, because we are going to be talking about the Booker Prize 2025. The winner will be announced on Monday, November 10th, and I'm going to talk about it and what might win. I haven't looked at other prediction videos or anything like that. I didn't look up the odds. I'm just going to go off vibes and predict based on the limited number of ones that I have read from the long list and the short list. And we'll see on Monday if I am correct. So I should note before we get into all of that I will get to the Friday Reads portion of the video. If you would like to skip to that, you're going to miss me talking about the t-shirt that I'm wearing. You're going to miss me talking about the technical issue that I've been having. It's been great. And you'll miss me talking about the Booker Prize. But if you want to do that, I'll have a timestamp in the description box down below. And I finished 3 books this week, and I have 2 books kind of on the go-ish. We'll talk about it. I've been a cranky reader this week. That's your preview or teaser for the Friday Reads portion of the video. So, first things first, let's talk about the t-shirt. So, this is from Red Fern Booksellers in Kansas. So this is actually from the town in Kansas where Joel is from, where he grew up. And my in-laws went there recently and visited Joel's brothers. And we had told them about this store, which opened up not that long ago. And I follow them on Instagram. It's a very pretty store. So they went and got me this t-shirt, and I'm delighted. So it's Red Fern Bookseller. So, of course, there is a red fern on the front. And actually, on the back, it has the red fern again with the name of the store. And that's just kind of fun. A t-shirt that I have from Flint Hills Bookstore in Council Grove, Kansas, also has the logo on the back like that. I don't know why. I just find it very fun. So Flint Hills is another bookstore that I would like to visit in Kansas. I haven't been to Red Fern because the last time I was there with Joel, it didn't exist, and we didn't make it out to Council Grove to go to Flint Hills. Actually, I don't think they had opened yet either. And then I want to go to Lawrence, Kansas to visit the Raven. So I have a bookstore bucket list, and those 3 stores are on it. So just waiting to get there. Maybe sometime soon. I don't know. We don't have plans to go there. So we shall see. All right, let's talk about the technical issues that I've been having. So my laptop has not been doing well for over a month at this point. It's been plugging along, but it's been annoying. And it's been doing what I need it to do. I'm able to work on it. I have been able to edit videos and post videos on it, but it's been getting progressively more and more irritating. So I took it in to have it looked at, and I have a MacBook, and the perils of living in a rural area are that there's no Apple store anywhere near me. So there used to be like an authorized retailer shop in town where I live, and unfortunately they closed. It doesn't exist anymore. So there is a place that can work with Macs. So they replaced the battery, and it's actually only gotten worse since they replaced the battery. So now I've been on this 2-week ordeal where the battery charge just keeps crashing and the laptop shuts down, and they've looked at it. They can't figure out what's wrong with the battery. Might be defective. Now they need to look at the motherboard. So it's been fun. I might need to get a new laptop, and that's not fun either. So all of this is just to say that what's interesting is I'm filming this video and I have no idea if I'm going to be able to post it. If I can't get this edited and posted on my old laptop, I'm glad I held on to it, because in a pinch, I haven't had my laptop since Tuesday of this week. So I've been working off of my old laptop, which the R key does not work on. So I have to copy and paste an R whenever I'm typing. That's annoying. And other parts of the keyboard periodically conk out, and it's very slow. And so I have no idea if I'm going to be able to post this video. If I'm not, I will post something on the community tab to let you know, maybe a short. And I'll get it posted when I can. Hopefully, I will have an answer about what's going on with my regular laptop by the end of today, Friday. And we'll see, because it's been a week. I was working really hard to get caught up on comments, and then without a laptop or a regularly functioning laptop that can type R's, I've fallen behind on that again. So I want to try to catch up, and we'll see how that goes. But so, if you've seen Under the Tuscan Sun, you might remember that there's a story about a place in the mountains where they built a line for a train to come to them. But at the time they built the line, they did not know, there was no train that could make that voyage. So there's a recurring theme in the movie. They built the line before there was a train that could do it, because they hoped that it would be there someday. So I'm filming this video without knowing if I'm going to be able to post it. And I'm going to try to do all of this in one take so I don't have to edit the video, because Joel and I filmed our weekly wrap up this week, and I tried editing a video on my old laptop, and it's so slow and it's such an arduous process. It took 2 hours just to import the video onto the laptop. So that'll give you an idea of how I have gotten nowhere with the editing of that, because that video actually does require editing. And so I'm going to try to just circumvent that by, if I make a mistake, I'm just going to have to keep talking and roll with it. Because if I can just get this to post, I might actually have to upload on my phone. I've never done that. So maybe I'll have to try. I don't know. To be determined. So that's what's going on. Hopefully I'll have a resolution, but posting might be annoying for a while until I know until either the laptop gets fixed or I get a new laptop. So FYI. Okay, let's talk about the Booker Prize. So if you remember, or if you don't remember, the titles on the shortlist are Flesh by David Zaloy. I did read that one. And I'll put links to all of the reviews that I have of books on the shortlist down below if you want more about my opinion of it. So I do have a review of Flesh by David Zaloy. I also have a review of The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. I have not read The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz. I have read Audition by Katie Kitamura. Review will be down below. I DNF'd The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kieran Desai. It was my first DNF of 2025. I was this close to getting through the year without a DNF. And The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny got me. And then the final shortlisted title is Flashlight by Susan Choi. And I have not read that one yet. So the ones that I have reviews of are Flesh, The Land in Winter, and Audition. Since I DNF'd The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, I did not do a review because I didn't get far enough that I think I can really say much about the book. So, if I were a betting person, I think the safe bet would probably still be The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kieran Desai. Although Kieran Desai has already won a Booker Prize before, and it's not that I don't think they would want to give her a second one, but I do sort of, maybe this is me feeling that because I was not impressed with The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, that maybe they won't be, although clearly they are. So I feel like even though the safe money is probably still on The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, I am going to predict something else. And I think we can safely put The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz to the side. I will be shocked if that book ends up winning. That's the only book I can point to on the shortlist where I can say, if that one wins, I will be very surprised. So that one off to the side. And that, I think Katie Kitamura and Susan Choi, obviously there's a chance that either one of them could win. If I were a betting person, I would probably give an edge to Audition, but I think I'm going to put both of them to the side as well, because I think Flesh, The Land in Winter, and The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny are likelier choices, and that's just me going off of vibes. And maybe those vibes will end up being incorrect. We'll find out on Monday. But I feel like Flesh, The Land of Winter, and The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny are the most likely winners. I will not at all be surprised if Audition or Flashlight end up winning, but I'm going to lean in another direction. And as I said, of the three, safe money's on The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, but I'm going to put that one to the side as well. And that leaves me with Flesh by David Zaloy or The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. I was not thrilled with either of these books. However, of the long-listed titles that I did read, in my ranking, I did say that Flesh by David Zaloy is the one that I liked the best. And I think, well, there's a lot interesting about both titles as finalists and that could appeal to the jury for this year's prize. I feel like ultimately I'm going to say The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. And part of that is that the jury rereads the books. So they read all the books and discuss them, and then they pick the long list, and then they reread all of the books on the long list and choose the short list, and then they reread all of the books on the short list and then pick the winner. I think, although I didn't like it as much as Flesh, which is not saying much, I think The Land in Winter would be a more rewarding reread. And again, maybe this is my own experience of these books coloring my take on the situation, but I think if you know where Flesh is going, you know where Flesh is going. If you know where The Land in Winter is going, there are actually things that would might make a little more sense on a second pass, or, you know, your opinion of the book might change. You might find other shades of the story. Flesh is a lot more direct and straightforward. So almost entirely on the fact that I think The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller would be a better reread. You might experience more of the book on a reread. I'm going to predict The Land in Winter. I also think a lot of people have really been excited about how it is about an event in British history, a very cold blizzard that took down phone lines. It was, that part has gotten a lot of comments, at least on my channel, from people who remember or who have been told about this experience. So I feel like that could be another thing that gives it an edge, certainly over the American books on the short list. So that's going to be my prediction, The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. And although I didn't quite like the book, I don't know. This is a very meh year for me in the Booker Prize. So it's interesting that I'm still following it at all, I guess. But yeah, so that's what I'm going with. I'm going to go with The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. And we'll find out on Monday if that's correct. I would love to hear what you think is going to win the Booker Prize. And are you having a bitter Booker year? Let me know in the comment section down below. I know a lot of people have enjoyed these books on the long list, and the short list. So I don't mean to denigrate them, but I just did not have a good time with the books that I read. And the books that I read in addition to the short list, because I read them before the short list was announced, were The South by Tash Aw. Actually, that's the only one I read that did not make it onto the short list. So there you go. Let's move to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. So, as I said, I finished 3 books this week. The first 2 are absolutely not going to be a surprise to you at all because I was nearly done with them the last time we spoke in a Friday Reads video. The first one that I finished was actually The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante and translated by Anne Goldstein. And it was fine. I liked it. I didn't love it. And it's a very prickly book. It's not going to be for everybody. It's a more interesting book than a good book, I think, if that makes any sense. And I can't help but compare it to the movie. And I think the movie tells a lot of the backstory. This, as short as it is, it feels a little bit overwrought, especially when the protagonist Leda is thinking about her history as a mother and what happened leading up to her basically abandoning her daughters and living apart from them for many years. And they are still very much more attached to their father than they are to Leda. So she goes to a beach and is on vacation. And while there, she observes a family who they are having some sort of a reunion, and she sort of becomes obsessed with a particular woman who is very young. I think she's 19 or 20, and she has a young daughter who has a doll that she is mothering a lot, and the story kind of spins out from there. So, as I said, I think it's a fine book, not really great. And that's evidenced by the fact that I did actually have a copy of this book. And I actually forgot a lot of the time, if I finish a book and it's in this meh zone where I start to feel like, well, I don't need to keep this. I can trade this book in. But usually I will hold on to the book until I talk about it in a Friday Reads or do a wrap up. And so I'm done with those things. But I took it right to the used bookstore this week and traded it in. So it's gone. And that probably tells you a fair amount about The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante and my experience of it. Have I mentioned that I've been like cranky this week? But I had a much better experience with the other book that I finished, which was, well, one of the other books that I finished, which is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. Once again, this was given to me by a subscriber, Jordan Seifert. Thank you again, Jordan. I really enjoyed this book. It's a tiny little thing. You could dunk it in your coffee, but it packs a mean punch, at least it does to me. And there is another commenter had pointed out that there is a film adaptation from, I want to say 1987. It's somewhere around there. And it stars a very young Colin Firth, pre-Pride and Prejudice Colin Firth, and Kenneth Branagh. And it's on Canopy. So I'm really looking forward to watching the film adaptation of this as well. If you're unfamiliar, this is a tiny story about, it's set in 1920, and it follows a man named Tom Birkin. He's a veteran of World War I, and he carries a lot of strain and stress, PTSD from it. He has a facial tic. His face just keeps tensing up on the left side, and he can't really control it. So he has been working with someone who restores paintings, and he has just gotten his first commission on his own. So he heads up north to the country and starts working in this church. A wealthy benefactor of the church has passed away, and in her will, she stipulated that she wanted money to be set aside to restore a painting that has been covered up on the wall of the church. So he is brought in to do just that, and he takes up residence in the belfry of the church. And at first, he really keeps to himself, but he gets to know other people in this town slowly but surely. First, a man named Moon, who is working in the field behind the church. This wealthy benefactor also set aside some money to try to find the body or the remains of a family member of hers from the 1300s who had been excommunicated from the church and so was buried in the field because they were not allowed to be buried in the church. So Moon is out digging and camping in the field, and Birkin is in the church working on that. They strike up a friendship. Moon is also a veteran from World War I, so they kind of understand each other in a very profound way. Also, a young girl comes in, and she's very matter-of-fact and a little bit bossy, and pushes her way into Tom Birkin's life. The wife of the minister of this church also comes by and talks to him. Over the course of the summer, while he is there, he gets to know some people. He starts to feel like part of the place and like he has a place in the world again. But eventually, the project is going to be done. The summer is going to end, and he's going to have to go back to, he doesn't entirely know what. And he has to decide how he's going to carry through with the rest of his life. It's a very thoughtful, subtle, but beautiful story. I have wanted to read it for a very long time, and yet I've never purchased a copy for myself. So again, thank you to Jordan Seifert for solving that conundrum for me and putting this book in my hands, because I really enjoyed it a great deal. I think it's very good. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it as well. So a lot of people out there are fans of it as well. The third book that I read this week, and it's actually just occurring to me that if I can't really edit this video, I don't know if I'm going to be able to add thumbnails. If I am, you'll see a thumbnail. If not, it's because of the technology issue. So the third book that I finished was Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldree. Joel and I read this, listened to the audio while we were on the road. We went to Spokane last week and stayed there through the weekend. So we listened on the drive over to Spokane, a little bit driving around, and on the drive back, and then we still weren't done with it. So we listened in town here where we live, driving around, and then finished the book while we were having dinner one night. So this is the third installment in the Legends and Lattes series by Travis Baldree. By the way, he reads the audiobooks, and he does a very good job. He's really good at doing different voices for different characters. So he's just very good at that. If you have followed the series, you already know, but if you haven't, in the first book, which is called Legends and Lattes, we meet Viv, who is an orc who has been spending her life on quests and wanting to prove herself in this regard. And so she's been leading a very violent life, especially because she's an orc. She feels like that's what people expect her, and she has to live up to that expectation. But she has gotten tired, and she wants to quit the quest game and live a calmer, more peaceful life. So she moves to a new town and opens a coffee shop. And coffee is a pretty unknown thing in this sort of fantasy world. It's a very cozy fantasy book. It sort of started the cozy fantasy trend that has been ongoing for a while now. And so the first book is about her moving to this new town, settling in, and of course there is a conflict that eventually comes to light and she has to take care of. The second book, Bookshops and Bone Dust, I think, is a prequel. So it is about Viv in her early days of questing, when she is trying to prove herself, but she gets waylaid by an injury and is forced to stay in a town while the rest of her group goes off to sort of complete the mission. She meets Fern, who is what's called a ratkin and owns a bookshop. And Viv has not been a reader, but while she is waylaid in this town, you see all of the things that will eventually set her on the path to wanting to settle down in Legends and Lattes. And I had originally thought, I don't really need a prequel explaining how she gets to that point, but I actually really enjoyed the book. So you get to Brigands and Bread Knives. Fern shows up again, and she goes to the town where Viv lives. She has sold her bookstore, and she has been writing letters back and forth to Viv since Viv settled down and opened Legends and Lattes. And she hints in her letters that she's starting to feel dissatisfied with her store and wants a way out. Viv says, well, come here. There's the space next to her cafe is available, so why don't you open a bookstore here? So she agrees. She sells the bookstore. She goes to where Viv is living. On her way, she encounters a legendary elf named Asterix, who is also notable because she only has one ear. It's how people sort of recognize her. And she's 1,000 years old. As I said, she's a legend. There are lots of stories about her, but she's sort of mysterious because people don't really know her very well. She saves Fern and then disappears into the night. Fern gets to the town. At first, things are going really well. Opening the bookshop, it's an immediate success. But after the initial wave of busyness with the store settles down, Fern feels that sense of disappointment and a sort of restlessness again. And she doesn't know what to do. She wants to tell Viv, but she also doesn't want to tell Viv. So one night she's walking around to try to get the courage to tell Viv about what's going on, and she sees Asterix. And she decides that she's going to stow away in Asterix's carriage So she ends up on an adventure with Asterix. And along the way, she is getting to know herself, challenging herself, and trying to think out what she would like to do with her life and why she has been on the path that she has been on, what she wants, and all of that stuff. It's, again, a very charming book. It's a very good book. I think of the three, it's probably my least favorite. However, because I have enjoyed this series so much, it's sort of like the opposite of the Booker Prize. Like, I can say Flesh is my favorite, but that's still not a book that I really liked. This would be my least favorite, but it's still a book that I really liked. So opposites. And I don't know if Travis Baldree plans to do another installment. I think the only reason I would say that this one would be my least favorite is that, as interesting as Fern actually turns out to be as a protagonist, I missed Viv and her story, because you really only get Viv in the beginning and the end of the book. She's gone for the whole middle. I did miss Viv, so that's the only reason that I would say that it's probably the bottom of the pack so far for me. So those are what I've finished. I've been on a roller coaster with books this week because, as I mentioned, I've been a cranky reader this week. And I've been having a difficult time settling in with a book. And obviously, a lot of the problem is probably some of the technology issues, just, general stress over the state of the world. Still, that's an ongoing thing. And it's been a lot. So the first book that I wanted to start this week was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I actually mentioned in my video about the Andrew Carnegie long list for the medal for excellence in fiction, I'll link it down below, that I had picked up Wild Dark Shore and was currently reading it. And the only reason I'm mentioning it here is that I mentioned it in that video, because I DNF'd it and I didn't get far enough into it to call it something that I'm currently reading. If I get more than 15% of the way into an audio or over an hour into an audio, I'll call it something that I'm reading, and I will talk about it if I DNF it, because at that point I've experienced enough of the book to talk about why I decided not to finish. So I didn't meet those marks. And it's not that it's a bad book. It's not that it's not well written. Charlotte McConaughey writes very well. But it is a book that deliberately withholds information from the reader in order to tease you to keep reading and build a sense of suspense so you want to know what's going on. And I have a sort of knee-jerk opposition to stories like that, because too many times it just feels like you are being manipulated and the author's just stringing you along, and it's like, I start to feel like, just tell me what's going on. Don't tease me. And it can be done well, but I just could not make myself get into it. So I put it down. And maybe at some point I will try it again when I'm not such a cranky reader. But right now I had to just put it down, because I talked to Joel, who read it and really liked it, and explained why I felt like I just kept running into a wall. And he said, well, if you're feeling like that now, it's not going to get better, because the whole thing is about the secrets and teasing things out slowly. So I just decided, okay, well, I don't want to do that right now. So I put it to the side. Apparently, this is my new motion for putting things to the side. And after I had tried to start Wild Dark Shore, on Monday, I started picking up The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. I'm so excited that this book is out. I was a big fan of The Turner House, which was Angela Flournoy's debut book, which came out a couple of years ago before I had a BookTube channel. And if I had had a BookTube channel when I read that book, it would have been my whole personality that year, because I loved it. Alas, I didn't. So here's the thing, though. I picked this book up on Monday. I'm filming this on Friday, and I am 14 pages into the book. And I was talking to Joel about that yesterday and just saying, it's well written. I'm into it, but I just can't seem to make any progress. Part of that is an attention span issue. A lot of the time when I pick this book up, I keep getting distracted. But I sort of did therapy on myself last night, talking to Joel, and realized that the first chapter or first section of this book. So this is a book about is it 4 or 5? 5 black women who have been friends for a very long time. It's about how their friendship changes and how they change over the years as they are friends, and the rise and fall and all of that stuff. The first chapter is about Desiree. It's 2008. She has gone to Paris with her grandfather, Nolan, and very quickly, again, I'm only on page 14, so this is not a spoiler. He had been stationed in Paris during the war, and he has wanted to go back there because he is dying. Specifically, after they leave Paris, they are going to Switzerland so he can have assisted suicide. He doesn't want to live with the pain that he lives in anymore. And Desiree is she's there for him and wants to help, but she's also struggling accepting this situation. So as I was talking to Joel, I realized that's why I'm really having trouble getting through this first chapter, because that is hitting me really hard. It has been a year. Not going to get emotional. Not going to get emotional. It's been a year since our dear friend Leon started what turned out to be the final decline, and by the end of December, she was gone. So Joel and I have been thinking about her a great deal. And I guess I just hadn't made a correlation between my difficulty getting through that first chapter and those feelings of grief that have been bubbling and boiling over as we begin to hit the 1-year anniversary of losing Leon and the final process of all of that. And we don't need to talk about that before I get emotional. But so that is 100% why I have been having a hard time getting through the first chapter. So I flipped ahead, and I think, so I'm on page 14, and I think on page 20 something, page 25, the chapter ends and you move to 2018. So all I have to do is get through 10 pages, and then I will be into another chapter. That's the conclusion I came to last night. So hopefully I will be able to power through that 10 pages and get into the book, because I have really liked the setup, the story, the observations, and the way Angela Flournoy, you feel like you already know these people, or at least I do, just in 14 pages. And that's a marvelous gift for a writer to have. So I want to keep going with this one. I don't want to put this one to the side. I want it right here with me, and I want to finish it. So when I decided not to continue with Wild Dark Shore, I picked up the audio of Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. I had wanted to read it in October, spooky season, although it's not a very spooky book at all. And I didn't get access to it through Libby until now. So I'm doing it now. It's read by Frances Sternhagen, who does a really great job with the audio. I can't help but think it should be Kathy Bates, because this book was written with Kathy Bates in mind to play Dolores Claiborne, and she did in the movie, and she did it incredibly well. But if you can't have Kathy Bates, Frances Sternhagen is not a bad backup plan. So if you're unfamiliar, this is the story of a woman named, go figure, Dolores Claiborne, who lives on an island off of Maine. And her employer, Vera Donovan, has just died. And the police have called Dolores in for questioning. They believe she is responsible for the death of Vera Donovan. So in the movie, the way the structure is a little more complicated, but the way the book is told, it's entirely the dialogue of Dolores as she has come in for questioning, and she's telling the police about everything. So you only get her lines of dialogue. Periodically, she'll interrupt herself and say, "What's that you say? Oh, okay. I can speak closer to the microphone." So you're only getting her dialogue, although there are other people in the room who are talking. And I remember liking the book. I'm a fan of the movie. It's a little bit brutal in terms of subject matter. Like, check the trigger warnings, because it's a very difficult book. I insisted that Joel watch the movie a couple of years ago. And when in like the first 45 minutes to hour, Joel was like, "Oh my God." And then he got into it and saw like, okay, no, this is really good. So yeah, it's something my sisters and I enjoyed, and I still. Judy Parfitt is amazing in the movie. Should have probably won an Oscar, I would say, for playing Vera Donovan. So anyway, it's about Dolores talking about her life and the mysterious death of her husband many years earlier, and her relationship to Vera Donovan, and ultimately about what happened to Vera Donovan and her husband. So that's what I'm doing now. I will say, the first time I read it, I think I was 18 or 19, so maybe this wouldn't have been as much of an issue for me then. But Stephen King can sometimes be very interested in scatological stuff, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you know, it can be funny. But sometimes it just takes like a weird turn, like, oh God, what is that book about the friends in the snowy woods? And I think there are like aliens or some kind of monstrous creature, and the way you know that someone has been almost like parasite-ish relationship with an alien is that they fart ominously. And it's weird. It's weird. That's a book I DNF'd too. So there's a long digression. I think it's like a full hour of the audiobook where Dolores Claiborne is talking to the police officers about how when Vera was in the point where she really needed caretaking, she'd have lucid days and she'd have days where she was not lucid at all. And on the days where she was lucid, she would play a mean prank on Dolores where she would refuse to go to the bathroom when Dolores was there, and then she liked to create a mess that Dolores would have to clean up. So we spend like an hour of the audiobook on this wild battle back and forth where Dolores is trying to get a step ahead of Vera and Vera is trying to stay a step ahead of her, and it's like, this could have been like 2 pages of the book. I didn't need this much time about a battle over poop between Vera Donovan and Dolores Claiborne. It starts to feel like a lot. However, I'm still enjoying the book and look forward to finishing it. So that is what I've been reading this week. And we have the Bake Off finale tonight, Joel and I. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's been a good season. No spoilers, please. And yeah, that's everything. So I'm going to leave it there for this week. Hopefully I'll get that laptop situation figured out very soon. Send good vibes and all of that stuff. So as always, I really appreciate your time. I'd love to hear what you've been reading and watching and all of that stuff in the comment section down below. And as always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.